For the 20th time since the train had left Carlisle, Pender glanced up from his book, Murder at the Manse, and caught the eye of the man opposite. It was a secret face, the face of one who knew a great deal to other people's disadvantage. Pender wondered what the man's profession might be. He had on a raincoat and a shabby soft hat. His age was perhaps about 40. There was no stop now before Rugby, and it was unlikely that any passenger would enter to break up this disagreeable situation. Pender could, of course, go out into the corridor, but that would be an acknowledgement of defeat. Pender lowered his book and caught the man's eye again. "Getting tired of it?" asked the man. "Night journeys are always tedious," replied Pender, half relieved and half reluctant. "Would you like a book?" "Thanks very much," the man said, "but I never read detective stories. So inadequate, don't you think? The murderers are so incompetent. They bore me." "Oh, come," said Pender. "Committing a murder isn't as simple as shelling peas." "Ah," said the other man. "You think that, do you?" "Well," said Pender, "if it's so easy, how would you set about committing a murder?" "I," repeated the man. "Oh, that's different. I happen to know how to do it." "What is this wonderful method of yours?" Pender asked. "You can't expect me to tell you that, can you?" said the other man. "It might not be safe." "Oh, rubbish!" exclaimed Pender. "I shouldn't think of murdering anybody." "Oh, yes, you would," said the other man, "if you really believed it was safe." "That's ridiculous," cried Pender warmly. "That's what most people would say, but I wouldn't trust them. Not with sulphate of thanatol to be bought for twopence at any chemist's." "Sulphate of what?" asked Pender sharply. "Ah, you think I'm giving something away? Well, it's a mixture of that and one or two other things, all equally ordinary and cheap. For 9pence you can make up enough to poison the entire cabinet. Though, of course, one wouldn't polish off the whole lot at once. It might look funny if they all died simultaneously in their baths." "Why in their baths?" "Well, that's the way it would take 'em. It's the action of the heat that brings on the effect of the stuff, you see. It's quite simple chemical reaction, and it couldn't possibly be detected by analysis. It would just look like heart failure. No, I wouldn't trust anybody with that formula. Not even a virtuous man like yourself. Oh, dear me. Rugby already. I get out here. I have a little bit of business to do at Rugby." He rose and pulled down his hat more firmly. The train slowed down and stopped. With a brief good night and a crooked smile, the man stepped onto the platform. Pender watched him stride quickly away into the drizzle. He returned to his book, but his attention still kept wandering. What was the name of that stuff the fellow talked about? Sulphate of what? For the life of him, he couldn't remember. It was on the following afternoon that Pender saw the news item. He'd bought the Standard to read at lunch, and the word Bath caught his eye. "Wealthy manufacturer dies in Bath. Wife's tragic discovery." A distressing discovery was made early this morning by Mrs. John Brittlesea at Rugby. Finding that her husband didn't come down in time for breakfast, she searched for him in the bathroom, where he was found lying dead in his bath. The cause of the death is pronounced to be heart failure. "That's an odd coincidence," said Pender. "At Rugby? I should think my unknown friend would be interested, if he's still there doing his bit of business. I wonder what his business is, by the way." Pender slowly became obsessed. Similar deaths kept occurring, and he skimmed his paper each morning for headlines about baths before settling down to read the news, and was at once relieved and vaguely disappointed if a week passed without a hot bath tragedy. And he still tried without success to remember the name of that drug the man in the train had mentioned. Then came the excitement in Pender's own neighborhood. An old Mr. Skimmings, who lived alone with a housekeeper in a street just around the corner, was found dead in his bathroom. His heart had never been strong. The housekeeper told the milkman that she'd always expected something of the sort to happen, for the old gentleman would always take his bath so hot. The verdict, of course, was accidental death. Pender that evening went out for his usual stroll. Some feeling of curiosity moved him to go around past the late Mr. Skimmings' house. As he loitered by, the garden gate opened, and a man came out. In the light of a street lamp, Pender recognized him at once. "Hello," he said. Oh, it's you, is it?" said the man. "Viewing the site of the tragedy, eh? What do you think about it all?" "Oh, nothing very much," said Pender. "I didn't know him. Odd, our meeting again like this. Do you live in these parts?" "Me?" said the man. "Oh, no. I was only here on a little matter of business." "Last time we met," said Pender, "you had business at Rugby, just when that fellow was found dead in his bath, wasn't it?" "Yes. Funny thing, coincidence." The man glanced up at him sideways. "Left all his money to his wife, didn't he? She's a rich woman now." They were passing Pender's gate. "Come in and have a drink," said Pender, and immediately regretted the impulse. The man accepted, and they went into Pender's study. "Remarkable lot of these bath deaths lately," observed Pender as he squirted soda into the tumblers. "I suppose I've been taking more notice on account of that conversation we had in the train." Pender laughed, a little self-consciously. "It makes me wonder whether anybody else has hit on that drug you mentioned. What was its name?" The man ignored the question. "Oh, I shouldn't think so," he said. "I fancy I'm the only person who knows about that. I only stumbled on it by accident when I was looking for something else. But all these verdicts just show, don't they, what a safe way it would be of getting rid of a person." "You're a chemist, then?" asked Pender. "Oh, I'm a bit of everything," the man added. "You've got one or two interesting books here, I see." Pender was flattered. He went over to the glass-fronted bookcase and pulled out a volume to show his visitor. "These, I take it, represent your personal tastes?" the man said. He took down a volume of Henry James and glanced at the flyleaf. "Is that your name? E. Pender?" Pender admitted that it was. "And you?" he added. "Oh, one of the great Smith clan," said the other with a laugh, adding, "You seem to be very nicely fixed here." Pender explained that he had a small legacy. "Very nice," said Smith. "Not married?" "No. You're one of the lucky ones. Not likely to be needing any sulfate of any useful drugs in the near future." "Well, I'd better be getting on. Thank you for your hospitality." When he'd gone, Pender returned to his glass of whiskey, which stood there nearly full. "Funny," he said to himself. "I don't remember pouring that out." He drank his glass slowly. Suddenly he gave a start. The whiskey in his glass. Pender was convinced that he'd never poured it out. Smith must have done it while his back was turned. A cold sweat broke out on Pender's forehead. He took a mixture of mustard and water and managed to make himself sick. His life was saved for the time being, he told himself, but he was still uneasy. He ordered 2 more morning papers and the News of the World on Sundays, and kept a careful watch upon their columns. He also took to attending inquests. 3 weeks later, he found himself at Lincoln. A man had died of heart failure in a Turkish bath. The jury added a rider to their verdict of accidental death to the effect that the management should exercise a stricter supervision over their clients. As Pender emerged from the hall, he saw ahead of him a shabby hat that seemed familiar. He plunged after it and caught Mr. Smith about to step into a taxi. "Smith!" he cried, gasping a little. He clutched him fiercely by the shoulder. "You devil! You're mixed up in this. You tried to kill me the other day." A policeman pushed his way through the gathering crowd. "Here," said he. "What's all this about?" Smith tapped his forehead significantly. "It's all right, officer. The gentleman seems to think I'm up to no good. Here's my card. The coroner knows me. But he attacked me. You'd better keep an eye on him." "This man tried to kill me?" said Pender. The policeman nodded. "Don't worry about that, sir," he said. "The heat in there has upset you a bit." "But I want to charge him," said Pender. "I wouldn't do that if I was you," said the policeman. "I tell you," said Pender, "that this man Smith is a murderer." The policeman winked at Smith. "Best be off, sir," he said. "I'll settle this." "No, sir," he held Pender firmly. "Just you keep cool and take it quiet. That gentleman's name ain't Smith nor nothing like it." "Well, what is his name?" demanded Pender. "Never you mind," replied the constable. "You leave him alone or you'll be getting yourself into trouble." "All right, officer," Pender said. I'll come round to the police station and tell you all about it." "What do you think of that one?" asked the inspector of the sergeant half an hour later, when Pender had finally stumbled down to the station. "Up the pole and halfway round the flag," replied his subordinate. Replied the inspector. "Well, we've got his name and address. Better make a note of him. He might turn up again, poisoning people so as they die in their baths. Wonderful how them balmy ones think it all out, isn't it?" The spring that year was cold and foggy. It was March when Pender went down to an inquest at Deptford, but mist was hanging over the river as though it were November. As he sat in the dingy little court, he could scarcely see the witnesses. Everybody in the place seemed to be coughing, and Pender felt as though he were due for a bout of influenza. Straining his eyes, he thought he recognized the face on the other side of the room, but the fog stung and blinded him. He felt in his overcoat pocket, and his hand closed on something thick and heavy. Ever since that day in Lincoln, he'd gone about armed for protection. Not a revolver. He was no hand with firearms. A sandbag was much better. The inevitable verdict was returned, and the spectators began to push their way out. Pender had to hurry now, not to lose sight of his man. At the door he almost touched him, but a stout woman intervened. He plunged past her as the man in front turned his head, and the light over the door glinted on his glasses. Pender followed him quietly. Where was he going? Home, by bus or tram? No. He turned off to the left down a narrow street. The fog was thicker here. They must be near the river. There was an open space with a lamp in the middle. Pender saw the man standing beneath it, consulting something in a notebook. 4 steps, and Pender was upon him. He drew the sandbag from his pocket. The man looked up. "I've got you this time," said Pender, and struck with all his force. Pender was quite right. He did get influenza. It was a week before he was out and about again. The weather had changed, and the air was fresh and sweet. He felt as though a weight had been lifted from his shoulders. He tottered down to a bookshop in the Strand, and then he turned into a small restaurant and ordered a cutlet. 2 journalists were at the next table. "Going to old Buckley's funeral?" asked one. "Yes," said the other. "Fancy getting himself bashed on the head like that. Must have been on his way to interview the widow of that fellow who died in his bath. It's a rough district. Poor devil. He was a great crime reporter. They won't get another like Bill Buckley in Harry. He was a decent sort, too. No end of a practical joker. Remember his joke about sulfate of thanatol?" Pender started. Sulfate of thanatol. That was the word that had eluded him for so many months. A curious dizziness came over him. "He'd sit there looking at you as sober as a judge," the journalist was saying. "There's no such stuff, of course. But he used to try the joke out on poor idiots in railway carriages to see how they'd take it. Would you believe that one chap actually—" "Hello," put in his friend. "Look, that bloke over there's fainted. I thought he was looking a bit white."